In 1190, Moses Maimonides sits in Cairo with a problem. He's mapping the celestial hierarchy. Seraphim with 6 wings, cherubim made of living fire, the Ophanim spinning wheels covered in eyes, and there's a gap. A dangerous, glaring gap at the bottom. These cosmic entities are so overwhelming that mortals who glimpse them fall on their faces, blinded, trembling. So who exactly talks to the prophets? Who delivers the everyday messages? Who shows up looking normal enough that Abraham offers them lunch? Maimonides needs angels you can actually have a conversation with. So he invents them. Not from ancient texts, not from mystical visions, from grammar. He's reading Proverbs 8:4 and spots something unusual. The Hebrew word Ishim, a weird plural of ish, meaning man. Not the standard anashim you'd expect. Not B'nai Adam, sons of man, the usual term for humans. Just Ishim, men but stranger. Men but not quite. And Maimonides writes, "These are the angels which speak with the prophets and appear to them in visions. They are called men because their tier is almost within reach of the human mind." He's created the Ishim, the lowest rung of the cosmic ladder. The angels who don't make your eyes bleed when you look at them. The intermediaries between the incomprehensible celestial machinery and the prophets who need actual instructions. He places them at tier 9, just above humanity, close enough to touch. But here's what makes this moment explosive. Maimonides doesn't just name them. He goes back through every biblical encounter with mysterious men and systematically relabels them. Every time the Hebrew says Ish appears to someone, Maimonides declares, "That wasn't a man, that was an Ishim." Daniel 9:21. "While I was praying, the man Gabriel came to me in swift flight." The Hebrew says Ish. Ishim Genesis 18:2. Abraham looks up and sees 3 men standing before him. The Hebrew says Anashim. Ishim. Genesis 32:25. Jacob wrestles with a man through the night until dawn. The Hebrew says Ish. Ishim. Genesis 37:15. Joseph wanders lost, and a man finds him in a field and redirects him. The Hebrew says Ish. Ishim. Notice what's missing? Never. Ben Adam. The term for mortal humans, that's conspicuously absent. To Maimonides, that absence proves everything. This is a different category of being, hidden in plain sight across Genesis, Daniel, Ezekiel. Angels cosplaying as men, close enough to humanity that they can ask directions, share meals, wrestle until dawn. He's essentially arguing that every mysterious stranger in biblical narrative who shows up, delivers crucial information, then vanishes. That's not literary device or divine cameo. That's an entire class of celestial being operating at the intersection of heaven and earth. And it's brilliant reverse engineering. He's reading backwards through scripture, finding every instance where someone encounters an Ish in circumstances that seem charged with meaning, and constructing a taxonomy. The Ishim become the explanation for how prophecy actually works. Not through terrifying visions of cosmic wheels, but through beings that can sit down and have a conversation. But remember this moment, because within decades, someone's going to check his work. Samuel ibn Tibbon, Maimonides' translator from Arabic to Hebrew, reads this and pauses. He knows the Talmud. He knows the Midrash. He knows the centuries of rabbinical commentary. And he cannot find the Ishim anywhere, not in Babylonian tractates, not in Palestinian traditions, not in mystical texts. He writes, almost apologetically, that the term must have some lost Talmudic origin. Must have. Because surely Maimonides didn't just make it up? Centuries later, Reuven Rappaport goes hunting. He traces backward through every mention, every citation, and finds the source Maimonides might have used. Midrash Proverbs 8:4. He opens it expecting confirmation. What he finds is the mirror image. The Midrash contrasts Ishim and B'nai Adam, the 2 terms for men. It says the righteous, when they follow the law, can be called Ishim, like the attending angels. Not that angels are Ishim. That righteous humans aspire to that designation, reaching toward angelic status. Maimonides flipped it. He took a metaphor about human virtue and built an entire angelic class. He read, "Humans can be like angels," and wrote, "Therefore angels appear as humans." It's theological judo. using the text's own weight to create something new. And it works, not because it's ancient, but because it solves real problems. Before Maimonides, Jewish angelology is a chaotic grab bag. Biblical names, Talmudic speculation, apocalyptic visions. Entities appear and vanish with no clear system. His Mishnah Torah creates order. 9 tiers, clear hierarchy, every angel in its place. At the top, the Shayot, living creatures too vast to comprehend. Below them, the Ophanim, the wheels within wheels. Then, Seraphim, Hashmalim, Cherubim, descending through increasingly accessible forms until you reach the 9th tier, the Ishim, who can knock on a tent flap and ask for water. It's elegant. It's systematic. It maps perfectly onto medieval philosophy's obsession with chains of being, with graduated emanations from the divine to the material. The Ishim become the theological equivalent of customer service representatives, angels whose entire job is being comprehensible. Within a century, the Zohar, the foundational text of Kabbalah, copies the term wholesale. Not just the name, but the concept, the tier, the function. Modern scholar Mark Shapiro traces the citation chain and confirms it. The Zohar lifts this directly from Maimonides. No independent tradition, no mystical revelation, just good ideas spreading. By 1300, Jewish mystical texts treat the Ishim as ancient wisdom. By 1500, Christian Kabbalists are incorporating them into their own hierarchies. By 1800, occultists reference them as primordial knowledge. Wikipedia lists them as if they've existed since Sinai. But they haven't. They're barely older than Oxford University. And here's what makes this fascinating. It doesn't diminish them. The Ishim work because Maimonides understood something true about how religious experience operates. Prophets describe conversations with divine messengers, not blinding visions. Jacob wrestles something that feels physical, human-shaped, graspable. The 3 visitors to Abraham eat his food. These encounters require beings that exist at the boundary between cosmic and mundane. Other traditions solve this differently. Christianity inherited Pseudo-Dionysius's 9 choirs, a rigid hierarchy where even the lowest angels, the regular angels, remain thoroughly celestial. No customer service tier, no beings specialized in human contact. The gap just exists. Islam solves it by keeping angels fundamentally alien. Jibril can assume human form when necessary, but that's transformation, not nature. Angels remain distinctly other. Judaism needed something else. The God of the Tanakh speaks to people constantly, burning bushes, still small voices, mysterious strangers on roads. The text is full of divine human interaction that's intimate, conversational, almost casual. Maimonides names the beings that make that possible. The visual evidence of this invention spreading is everywhere. Medieval Hebrew manuscripts show the hierarchy pyramid, Ishim at the base, barely distinguishing from the human realm just below. Renaissance Christian Kabbalists draw their own versions, trying to reconcile Dionysian and Maimonidean systems, creating hybrid charts that layer Ishim into the mix. Artists paint Jacob's wrestling match with increasing theological sophistication. Early medieval versions show a clearly divine figure. Wings, halos, the works. Post-Maimonides paintings show a man, muscular, human-shaped, ambiguous. Because that's the point. The Ishim are the angels who can be mistaken for human, who operate in that liminal space. Fast forward to now. Every fantasy role-playing game that includes angel hierarchies, D&D's celestial tiers, Bayonetta's angelic ranks, Supernatural's bureaucratic heaven, they're all downstream from medieval systematizers like Maimonides. The idea that there must be lower-tier angels, grunt workers, beings close enough to humanity to interact regularly, that's his legacy. Modern occult texts cite Ishim as if referencing ancient grimoires. They're listed alongside seraphim and cherubim, presented as co-equal traditional knowledge. Nobody mentions they appear in print for the first time in 1190. And maybe that's how tradition actually works. Not handed down from Sinai, but invented by brilliant people solving real problems, then accepted because the solutions are elegant. Maimonides saw a gap in the cosmic org chart and filled it with angels you could talk to. He justified it with careful textual analysis, grammatical observation, theological logic. It caught on because it was useful. It explained something people experienced, the sense that sometimes the divine breaks through in ordinary guises. Not overwhelming visions, but conversations. Not cosmic wheels, but men who appear at just the right moment. The Ishim are the angels of everyday revelation. The ones who find Joseph lost in a field and point him toward his brothers. The ones who sit under Abraham's tree and deliver news that will change everything. The ones who wrestle Jacob through the dark hours and leave him transformed at dawn. They exist because Maimonides needed them to exist. Because prophecy required intermediaries. Because the gap between the incomprehensible divine and struggling humanity needed bridge builders. He found them in a grammatical irregularity, a weird plural, a pattern of word choice across Genesis. He reverse-engineered them from absence, from what the text doesn't say. And in doing so, he gave Judaism something it didn't know it was missing. Angels built for human contact. Celestial beings whose entire purpose is being almost within reach. The Ishim aren't ancient, but they're real. As real as any idea that solves a problem people didn't know how to articulate. They're the customer service angels of heaven, invented wholesale in medieval Cairo, now embedded so deep in tradition that Wikipedia lists them as if they've always been there. Sometimes the most powerful truths are the ones we build ourselves.